Sorry, let me start the recording. This is MSP Waves Radio. You are listening to the Steem Panel Discussion. This is the second half of this. I'm your host, Agrode. We have Andrarchy from Steemit, Block Trades, Alir from Utopian, Jesta from ChainBB, Luke Stokes, Fairsim, and Tim Cliff with us. I'm happy to go take questions at this point from the audience. I'm also happy to sort of keep asking some questions of the panel and see where else this discussion will go. Let's see. So in the next segment here, just trying to figure out, like, okay, so we have a platform that's growing, we have a currency that's rising. What can we do to sort of pour gasoline on the fire that seems to have just started? What's one of the I know that we have the communities coming, we have SMTs. What do we as witnesses need to be doing to help sort of foster this, to grow it, to help it go faster? What are some discrete steps that we can take working with our various communities and our networks to sort of speed this along?
I guess I'll jump in. No one's really talking at the moment. I'm going to go back to education. There's just such an information asymmetry gap between those who hear about Steem or Steemit and those who, join up for the first time, and then the amount of information needed to really get it and realize how world-changing and revolutionary and amazing this whole ecosystem is. So just if we can educate people as quickly as possible with great, videos, great, pictures, audio, everything you could think of, I think that's going to be key. And a lot of what you're doing here online on the air is great.
Thanks. I mean, I try to do some of that. Every week or every other week, I host an orientation in the PoundNet Discord channel for trying to onboard new users, to explain to them what the different topics are. But obviously, just me doing that, every other week isn't going to be able to handle the influx, and I don't speak enough different languages. So, there is a big learning curve here, right? Steem Power, SBDs, post rewards, transfers, wallet, private key, private posting key, private active key. There's just trying to look at various definitions. Like, there's a lot that's going on here. It's not as simple as just posting onto Facebook in part two, because then you have markdown that you have to deal with. I mean, what can we do besides the education piece? What else can we do to make this make it a little bit easier for the brand new users in the community? And is that something that we should be targeting?
I couldn't get in earlier before the break, so I will just add to what Luke said before. We need to focus a lot more on the currency, on the abilities with the transaction time and no fees. The platform which allows to accept SPD and Steem and a lot of other currencies called coin payments. If you do know anyone who has a shop or online or brick and mortar, whatever, they have a great, even a point of sale terminal where you can just enter the dollar amount you want. They calculate directly to Steem, and then you can pay in your shop. And a lot more people need to use that. We need to get the focus away a bit from the blogging, from the earning angle, and get more into the usabilities. That's the way to grow out where we are.
Other folks want to chime in with some ways to help grow this platform?
I think both of those are very important. I mean, I think we need to educate people on the currency on one hand and on the blogging side of it on the other hand. They kind of go hand in hand, but people need a lot of education for both of those. It's a complicated system, and I suppose we can make the interface better to alleviate that somewhat, but it'll just take time.
I think the answer as far as what the witnesses can do, the answer is different for each witness to a large extent. Depends on what their capabilities are and what their sort of I guess focus is. For us, it's a lot more on the tools side and the blockchain side, and discussions around how to move the blockchain forward with the rules and things like that. But certainly education is just as an important part. And so really, there's no one answer, I think, to this question.
There's a lot of answers.
Yeah, and by the way, all this stuff is part of improving the Steemit.com interface, and this is stuff we think about too. It falls well within our priorities list, at least for the condenser team. So for those who don't know, condenser is the Steemit front end, and these aren't problems we're blind to, and we certainly are working on it. And some of it comes down to marketing, and we have a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline on that end. And then some of it comes down to user interface, and it's certainly something that we think about. And you could probably find some pull requests in there in the GitHub repo, move us toward that goal. But it's going to be gradual. It's a gradual process of making it better and better. From our end, at least, and certainly other people can speak to what other interfaces and players can do to improve the process.
So one of the things that I've gotten a fair number of comments or concerns about is either, I guess I'd put this into the social behavior category. Flagging isn't as big of an issue as it was before, but there's still a lot of flagging. There's still some plagiarism, still some spam. Should this be a concern of the witnesses? Should this be a concern of the big stakeholders? Is this on your, I'm asking the whole panel, is this on your radar, either the social behavior of flagging and whale wars, or is this on your radar of plagiarism, spam, and shit posts? Those are some of the concerns that I saw reading through the comments. What do you guys run into?
I'd actually like to touch on that a little bit. I wrote a post last night, which was kind of some of the thoughts that were spinning in my head before the show today, and it touched on the fact that with Steem dollars recently going up to $10, it reminded me that if you had $1 worth of Steem dollars, you now have 10. And while I think that the expectation that Steem dollars are going to be going to the moon is maybe a little far-fetched, I do think that the possibility of Steem going to the moon is a possibility. And there's so many people that are focused on, I'm not earning enough rewards, or the rewards are going to the wrong people. And, they might get 25 cents or even 2 cents on a post. And the theme of the post was basically that 2 cents worth of Steem that you earn today, if you hold on to it and the platform really takes off, could actually be worth a lot more. And I think if people started looking at it from more of a long-term perspective, that a lot of these frustrations about a small amount of rewards would go away. And as far as the abuse and the spam and the plagiarism, that's definitely there. And I think that it's important that as witnesses and even community members, that we all try to do what we can to have less of that and more good things. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit too much of a focus right now. There's a lot of money in the rewards pool, and if you look at the amount that's actually going to what I think people would classify as bad stuff, it is a small fraction. And there's still a pretty large chunk of the pie for people who are doing good things for the platform and adding value in their own unique way. I'd much rather see more focus put on that, as far as, what can we do to make the platform better, and then doing what we can to reward the people that are doing that, than to constantly be focused on all the stuff that certain bad actors in the community are doing to take advantage of the system.
Go, Alir, are you trying to speak? Go for it.
Yeah, so I also wrote something about this recently. And specifically for the flagging war, I have my opinion about this, and I think it's really wrong, as I also said it in my post. And the reason for this is that this is a short-term solution to fix a long-term problem. we are trying to. There are big accounts getting together to try to flag bad posts in a way to remove the rewards they shouldn't get, and bring them back to the reward pool. But this is not going to work in the long term. And I want to stress this point again. I believe the only way to fix this problem is in an organic way. So really fixing content discovery in the Steem blockchain, and really give much more importance to quality content with better algorithms, and with a better way to interact with the Steem blockchain, and a better way to really sort and find quality content inside the Steem blockchain. So it's both a front-end issue in Steemit condenser, but it's also an issue in the blockchain, the Steem blockchain itself, right now, in my opinion. And by fixing that, I believe this flagging war, it's completely unnecessary and useless, and we wouldn't need to act like this if we could fix the root cause of the problem.
Other folks want to chime in on social behavior on the platform or spam and plagiarism?
I tend to.
Nope, go for it.
Oh, I wasn't going to say a lot. Mostly, I tend to agree with what both the other guys have said, Lear and Tim Cliff. So.
Yeah, it's the flagging issue. The issue, I saw this in chat. I think it was What's Up. It's the issue is that it is actually a flag. Really, these should be downvotes. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with a post and downvoting on it. It's the perception that when people receive a downvote, they think they did something wrong. They didn't. It's just someone else's opinion affecting that reward.
I've heard that idea before, but I don't think it's really true. We had downvotes at one point, and I saw kind of the same behaviors and same upset when we'd had downvotes instead of flags. In fact, they tried to move it to flag as sort of a, well, it's hard to say what they really were trying to do, but I don't think it really is going to make a major difference to change from flags to downvotes. I do think of changing the rewards mechanisms will help to reduce the problem that we're facing where people are doing self-voting on bad posts. Obviously, I made a post about that, and I think it's probably not too difficult to implement some of the things that will help out. But overall, I think it's a small problem compared to a lot. Really the biggest reason it's a problem is mostly perception. It upsets some people, and that's a problem.
Yep, that's what I was trying to drive at. You said it better than I could.
Yeah, perception is key, and I love what Tim said as well. I'd love to see data-driven explanations of what's going on. You know, all of this, if it's data-driven, factual data that we can look at, then we can readjust our expectations and have accurate perceptions of reality. And I think that is the source of so much frustration, where the expectations are out of sync with reality. And so people can realize, for example, that investors are extremely important, and we need to make investors happy if we all want to enjoy a healthy rewards pool. And those kind of things where we're just focusing on one aspect of the reality and not seeing it for what it is, saying, okay, yeah, there is abuse, but what percentage of the rewards pool goes to that abuse? How bad is it? What's reality? And then once we see what is and what is data driven, we can have a much better perception, which can actually help us all enjoy the whole ecosystem much, much better, because we won't have all this loss aversion making us feel depressed and frustrated.
How do you guys feel about the performance of the network these days? I think I just watched, at one point I saw Ethereum at 500. I don't know what it's at currently, but I saw it dip down to at least 400. And some of that seems to be related to the crypto kittens taking up 25% of their network, having 20,000 transactions that weren't processed at the time. And we're starting to see some of these other places not really be able to keep up with the amount of transactions that are going on the platform. How do you see the current transaction load? How do you see our performance in that? And are we stable going forward? Is this a platform that investors should feel comfortable that if we scale 10x, 100x, 1000x, that we'll still be functional? Or are we going to run into the exact same transaction limit reached, and now we're going to have a whole new set of problems?
I think that goes back to the point of the currency and everything, which we should focus on a bit more. Because I've recently seen on a pretty big German cryptocurrency site, I think it was BTC Echo.de or something, they had an article about Ethereum being the cryptocurrency with the biggest, with the highest amount of transfers, and they even said Ethereum has more transfers than all other cryptocurrencies together. They just missed out on Steem in their research about that. So of course I wrote a comment there, but it's something we need to bring out more, the capabilities of Steem. It's not just a good entry platform, but it's a good platform to stay at, to use cryptocurrencies. And the network is absolutely stable at the moment. There's been all the issues we had with the witness and full node servers in the past months seem to be a thing of the past. I missed a block today, but none since weeks before. So my full nodes are running and crunching transactions. Everything's fine. We just need more users using the currency and using capabilities of the blockchain to a full extent.
I think we can be pretty proud of their current rate of, compared to other currencies as far as what kind of transactions we can handle, but I don't think we can sit on our laurels either. It seems likely based on the social media aspect of Steem that we're going to need more ability to handle transactions in any other blockchain too. And so I think we're still going to have to do work to allow us to scale, well, in fact, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, and just to chime in here, because I mean, we submit the most pull requests, and we are focused on increasing the runway, as I like to put it. But the critical issue is that is where you're starting from. So the good thing is that with Steem, we're already starting with network, right? We're not even using more than 1% of our network capacity at this point. So even with what we have in place, we can absorb 10x more traffic. But at the same time, as Dan pointed out, we cannot rest on our laurels here. And that's where things like Juicy and, but most importantly, AppBase. So AppBase is the most important next step. It's the most important new app layer that's going to enable 10x more transactions on the platform. And it's not like we're going to stop at AppBase. AppBase is just the beginning. Yes, we do have to continue. But the thing is, having a reasonable, knowing where you're starting from, the problem with Ethereum is that they're effectively saying, we're going to be able to 1000x this once. We're going to do sharding to do it. And we're going to be able to absorb, a ton more transactions. Whereas what we're saying is all we have to do is every year 10x network capacity. And it's a much more reasonable, much more, I mean, look, we're trying to scale as fast as we can. Don't get me wrong. The problem is that there are limitations to how fast you can scale. And so the important thing to bear in mind is what is the original state, how scalable is the original state, and then if you assume reasonable increases in scalability, will that be enough to absorb the network traffic that will be coming? And we're very confident in our ability to meet those demands.
What do you guys see as some of our biggest competitive threats? Who's gunning for us? Are we the competitive threat? Are we threatened right now? What should we as a community of people be wary about from either other blockchains or from fiat institutions? What kind of things keep you up at night in the scared category?
I guess I'll chime in here because in the past I've written some articles about the Steem, the organization, and specifically the leadership and the development team and all that. And just as we saw issues with the site, I was a little bit concerned about that. And when I went to Steam Fest and got to meet the developers directly, I was pretty encouraged by their abilities and what they're building. had a lot of long conversations with Andrarchy. But for me personally, I think one of the concerns is the leadership, that in terms of, the core developers of the blockchain right now are coming from Steem Incorporated. They're not coming from the witnesses. We're not seeing pull requests done outside of that particular organization. And that could potentially be a threat. I'm not saying it is a threat right now, but it's a potential concern in terms of where we want to go in the future. Like, we have to make sure the community is in alignment with the leadership of Steemit, the company, at this point. That may not be the case in the future if the witnesses start building out their own code, their own pull requests, and the community say, yeah, we want to go that direction instead. As far as competition from other blockchains, I think EOS is something that definitely could be a competitor, because if people don't like the distribution of Steem in the beginning, EOS has had a year-long ICO. So there's a lot of opportunity for wide distribution of that token. And if they want to build a Steemit competitor, as an example, or multiple competitors, that's something that we'll have to be aware of and think through.
Yeah, you said it well, but to add on to that, it's a matter of, if Steem isn't encompassing towards other platforms, then we'll start seeing competitors. We saw Akasha, and you see yours, and there was Cinero or something. There have been a couple attempts, but really Steem hasn't had much competition for what it is. There's a possibility that will come, though, if we remain focused on this one thing and we don't allow everyone else to grow with it. And I'm not saying that's the direction we're going. It's just that's something that keeps me up.
Yeah, I think, I essentially agree with what everybody's saying, in that the basic point is that right now, competitors, and when you have that situation, you become your biggest threat. And we are definitely focused on that, on improving what we know to be our weaknesses, and that essentially comes from the feedback from all of you people, the community members. We are not deaf to the complaints that are coming from everybody else, and we are actively working to fix these problems, because you can only exist without competitors for so long. And there are certainly a pipeline, but they're not competitors yet. So it is true that we don't have competitors, but it's also true that probably won't last forever, and we're obviously not blind to that reality.
I'm actually going to take an interesting twist on the question and say, I think we should be looking at a lot of the different organizations that might potentially be considered our competitors, whether that be other cryptocurrency tokens or social media platforms, and trying to look for more ways that we could work together with them. One example is how can we get more cryptocurrencies looking at space to launch the information about their ICOs or their token launches and that type of thing. How can we integrate into more other social media websites so that sharing something on Steemit is the equivalent of sharing something on Facebook and vice versa. So I think there's a lot of partnership opportunity there where we could leverage some of the other platforms that have large user bases and try to create a win-win situation. And then I'm going to talk about a second thing, which is, I do think that there's one thing that I run into that has me a little nervous as far as whether or not we can really sell ourselves to the larger crypto community. And that is, there was a Reddit chain where people were talking about Ethereum and Steem, and a lot of us from the Steem blockchain were on there kind of, making the case for why Steem is awesome. And there are some issues in the cryptocurrency community that I think are holding us back. One of them is misinformation. There's still people out there that think we have a 90% yearly inflation rate. And so I think getting more people educated on what Steem is doing today and how it works is good. But another thing that I don't have the answer to, and I am wondering if anyone has the question or the answer to this question, is there's the perception that Steem was ninja mined. And to an extent it was, but there was a purpose to that, which was to essentially fund the development. And if you look at, the Steemit account and a lot of the accounts that have a lot of Steam right now, it's not like they're using them for hookers and blow, I think was the joke that someone made a while back. I mean, the money that has gone into these early adopter accounts is primarily being used to grow the Steam ecosystem and hire developers, but there's the perception out there that essentially Steam is kind of a shady coin, and I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts on how we can address that.
Anjarki, do you want to address the hookers and blow concerns?
No comment. Just kidding. No, Tim's exactly right, and of course, anyone can check that stuff for themselves. I won't ask anybody to trust us. But no, the people that I work with, I feel embarrassed when I don't put in a 60-hour week because of how hard everybody on the team works, from Ned to every single member of the team. They all believe 100% in what we're doing. They don't have to work here. They choose to work here, and that results in check. That's what guarantees that the money that we have access to is going to be maximally leveraged. That doesn't mean people should just trust us, but at the end of the day, you can check, and that's the beauty of these open protocols.
All right, so there's a couple of people in the MSP Waves waiting room. I'm going to go pull Rondon up. He had some concerns about flagging, and we're going to revisit this for a second. Rondon, you're live on air. Can you just give us a quick hello?
Oh, hey.
All right.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. So, Rondon, you had some questions about the flagging concerns that we were talking about a little bit ago. Do you want to raise a question or two here?
Sure. Now, I'm just a minnow myself, and I've only been on the platform for a few months now. So some of the concerns that I have about flagging that maybe they've already been addressed before. I've tried to go back into the history and really get a grip on this whole flagging debate, because it has been raging on, it seems, since Steemit has started. But what I see with flags is whenever someone flags for spam or plagiarism or something, it's kind of a community standard that everybody accepts. There's really nobody who wants to see plagiarism or spam on the platform. But once that distinction starts going into opinions of what opinions and what ideas are allowed to be shared on the platform, that kind of micromanaging has way more effects on the actual growth of Steemit than I think we can actually see on the surface. Kind of like, like a free market metaphor would be like when a government regulation creates a regional monopoly within an industry somewhere. You don't know what the creative capacity of the population within that geographical location would have done, because we don't have a control to test for that. So you don't really know the damage that is done with it, but I think it's really hurting the actual growth. It's by dividing.
Can I touch on that?
By dividing, what's allowed into a smaller and smaller set that seems to go on indefinitely.
So I have two things to say on that. One of them is with the current state that we're in right now, and then the other is what I see as actually solving this problem. So right now, everyone who has Steem tokens is a stakeholder, and the more tokens you have, the more influence you have on the site. That's essentially the premise of how the blockchain works. And the reality is that every stakeholder gets to choose how to use their stake. And so if they see downvoting content that they dislike or they disagree with, or they don't want to be rewarded as the proper use of their stake, they have every right to do that. Now, obviously, there's some impacts to the end user experience, especially when you talk about new users who don't understand the system, and it can be perceived in a very negative way. And I actually see communities combined with SMTs as the solution to this. And I think wrapping our heads around how that's going to work is a really key element. So I'm going to try to describe it. Right now, the Steem token holders have 100% influence on how much rewards you have. So if a large Steem token holder wants to take away your rewards, they can do that. And unless an even larger one comes away and adds them back, There's no way around that. With an SMT, the community itself can form a token, and that token can have a monetary value in the same way that Steem tokens were. So let's assume that there's a community that likes a certain type of content that may not be as popular among the other whales or people on the platform. If they can create an SMT that has value, let's just say every one of their SMT tokens is worth 1/2 of a Steem token. If they can essentially start distributing the SMT tokens out to their community, the only people that have the ability to take away those rewards are the SMT token holders. Now, a Steem token holder can always come away and take away the Steem rewards, but the SMT rewards are going to be 100% directed by the SMT token holders. So for the communities that want to basically launch a new token, they can essentially build a community around that token and have full control over who gets the rewards for those SMTs.
So if somebody didn't like the thing that that community was doing, they would have to buy into their token in order to downvote the content they were producing.
Exactly. 100% yes.
Yeah, and to add to that too, they'd have to follow the rules of that community as outlined by the SMT oracles. So only people who can participate in that rewards pool would be the people that are following the rules that the oracles are checking for.
Now that might be the answer to all this, and that's a very interesting thing. Thank you very much for answering that.
I think they're spot on with this. This is an amazing point. I just want to highlight how important this point is.
How much longer do we have until these come around? Is this about 3 months still?
Early 2018 is our official stance on this, and we're not going to revise that now. But we are working as hard as we can, and the progress is very positive. And the next step is launching a test net, and the preparations for that are going very well. And you could hold me to that.
Anything else, Ron?
You know, I did have one more thing about marketing, kind of a little bit different than flagging, but I see a lot of people talk about how much we need marketing and stuff. And I don't really know about that. I don't think that's the case. I think word of mouth will do all the marketing we need if we have a good product. If there's something there for that people want to talk about and want to share. Facebook started out as like a secret club. You had to be a college member or something, and it was like a secret club. And then that kind of made people, you know, it created an artificial scarcity where people wanted to join in, you know, like. And then now it's the behemoth you see today. And I know Steem is not Facebook, but there are some parallels that could be drawn. And I don't really think that advertising is the actual answer to our needs. I think that will be done organically when we get it right.
Can we do with SMTs? Is it possible to have some of those front-facing websites have advertising and others not? Can that then become up to the community to figure out?
Yes, in fact, a great way of sorry, Tim. I'll keep it short. A great way to bootstrap the value of your SMT would be to incorporate advertising and then accept your SMT as payment for it. You don't have to. The beauty of Steem, and the reason why we're going to kill the advertising model, is because you don't have to use it. But it's very important that you be able to use it to benefit your advertising business and increase your margins in order to turbocharge adoption.
All right, I'm gonna pull. I guess Ron actually left. I'm gonna go pull Shane up. This is a Shane Welker. Actually, Rondon is one of the hosts of, or not the host, but he's like one of the station managers for MSP Waves, which is what we're all listening to right now. I've just invited Shane, who is Swelker 101, who's I think he's Witness 90 or so right now. Shane has some questions about bias. So, and this is a witness setting bias, not necessarily personal. Shane, are you there?
I am here. How are you guys doing?
Great.
So, yeah, I've been paying attention to the witnesses, considering I am one, and I've noticed that there are quite a few that have upped their bias to an extreme amount. I think Farism, you're at 910%. I see Netuoso at 300%. Can you guys go into an explanation what that does for the platform? And my understanding is that's to help bring down the price of SPD. And what is the thought process behind it? And what do you think, if that's a good idea, if this is just a blip, or if this is a long-term increase in SPD?
The main thing it does is discourage conversions, which comes back to the education point. If users don't know what they are doing, it hurts them. What you have to see there is that we take the median. So as long as more than 50% have a zero value set there, it's zero anyway, and the bias doesn't go into effect. But yeah, the effect would be that conversions would get less. So people are incentivized to sell it on the external market.
Anybody else want to chime in on their bias setting?
Well, I think the problem with what Farasim suggested in this case is that the people who are converting simply don't realize that there's any they shouldn't be converting. There's plenty of economic reason already not to convert at the current moment, and they're just not aware. So I don't know how to solve that problem, except maybe to disable it temporarily in the GUI or something.
Yeah, I think a warning would be helpful. I've already, like I mentioned earlier, I've already seen posts where people, even without that bias that would hurt them even worse, they're freaking out because they're like, wait, I heard Steam dollars are worth $10, $11, and yet I barely got any Steam when I did my conversion. And there's a lot of people even now that are still doing a conversion, and we can look that data up on the blockchain. So it's just an education thing. I would like for the interface to have a warning. When we have an external price higher than $1 for Steam dollars, we should let them know, hey, you might want to actually sell this on the internal market instead. You'll get a better deal, and it'll happen immediately, not in 3.5 days.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to handle it.
That could be based on the bias. So if all the witnesses had a bias set, or most of them, then they could easily find out that it might be a bad time to convert, for example. But
Solker, are you satisfied with your answers?
Yeah, I get one of my main. I guess the main question is then how do we alert the new users to let them know that this may or may not be a good idea? That's not something that's intuitively known when you go into the convert process.
So this discussion actually came up last time that there was a similar price spike in SPD, and one thing that we did was I submitted a pull request. So when users go to the convert option now, there is actually a warning dialog that comes up that says, hey, this might not be a good idea. You should consider looking at the currency market and see if you could get a better option for trading. But I think part of the problem is that with the user base that we're going after, there are so many people that understanding of cryptocurrencies and tokens that I think a lot of us take for granted, that just this idea of converting versus trading is kind of a foreign concept and very difficult to wrap their heads around. So that's actually, I've had a lot of discussions with other witnesses about whether to use a bias or whether not to use a bias. And the main reason that I've been holding out and keeping my bias at 0 right now is because I feel that there's too many, unfortunately, uninformed users that if there was a bias lowering the amount of SPD conversions, that they're essentially going to get ripped off by the blockchain, in the sense that they wouldn't get the $1 worth of Steem conversion that essentially they were promised as kind of the premise for how those conversions work. And so just because of the fact that adding a bias would harm those users, I personally don't think it's a good idea. But at the same time, there is an unanswered question about what things can we do to bring the price of SPD back down to its peg. And unfortunately, with the tools that we have in the tool belt right now, that really is one of the only options. So if that is an important point, and there are witnesses that feel that holding the peg is a very important thing. I definitely don't disagree with them using their bias, but I think it's largely a personal judgment decision as far as which of those two things individual witnesses find more important.
All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to pull Shane back down. I'm going to go grab the kitty girl and bring her into the chat. The kitty girl, you're here. Can you give us a voice hello?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. You have a question for the panel?
Yes, I do. And I've been on the platform for less than 3 months, so I hope this isn't too newbie a question. But why don't we just use Steem and ditch the concept of Steem-backed dollars? What are the essential differences between the two? What can one do that the other cannot?
I think it boils down to it would be easier just to use one currency. It would be a lot more simple. The idea behind Steem dollars was that it was something familiar to people. So that way people didn't have to think about a currency that constantly changed value. Getting rid of SBD would be hard simply because people have SBD and you don't want to just take the value away from them.
Well, I would have thought maybe that one could be converted to the other because we can freely move them back and forth on the platform, correct?
You can go one way currently. You can go from SBD to Steem, not the other way around.
And sorry, just to clarify, there's a difference between converting, which I think is what Jessa is talking about, and trading, which is what I think you're talking about. So the conversion process actually destroys the SBD token and creates Steem tokens in its place. And so that process only goes one way. But at the same time, you can still trade SBD tokens for Steem tokens, and you can trade the other way around. So those are two very different things.
I see. Okay, that makes a bit of sense.
It would of course be possible to force conversions when we would get rid of SPD. That has been on the table, has been discussed so far. There was just no majority. A lot of people still try to save SPD, see it as something useful also for businesses later. And so before we completely cut it out, I think we should try to find a way to stabilize it. But yes, that discussion has been there and will be there again when the price doesn't keep at the peg.
Does the panel find that the high price of SBD is a problem? I mean, in like a traditional fiat currency, the governments are constantly and the banks are constantly manipulating the price down so that when they're taking these loans and they inflate the currency, it's really easy to go pay those loans off. And so there's an incentive to constantly inflate. But, you know, if I get away from standard banker logic, or like if I have a massive loan and I don't want to think that way anymore, now I want to start thinking about, look, as like an actual consumer on this platform, does it hurt me to have a strong SBD? Like maybe it hurts that it's not quite as familiar, but having a strong dollar to me doesn't sound like a crisis or a concern. Do you feel differently about that?
I think the only potential problem with right now at the moment with SPD being high is that it might discourage people from using it as a currency, but given that it's not for commerce, but given it's not really used as a currency for commerce that much right now, I don't think it's a problem at the moment. You kind of have this downside protection of it's going to be worth at least $1, and that's a nice thing to have. So it can be useful from that point of view. If you're suddenly uncomfortable with the price of Steem, you think it's going to take a sudden drop, you can shift into SPD and sort of ride it out until you're comfortable with things again.
Yeah, I personally would love to see the SBD be at around $1 99% of the time. But personally, just speaking for myself, I think it would be kind of cool if every once in a while it occasionally spiked, and I don't think it damages things too much. But if it permanently is not near $1, I think in the long run, from an economic standpoint, it would lose its utility and its value, and it would eventually kind of crash, because what the hell's the point? And why? And it's just more of a confusing aspect. It's hard enough getting people interested in these tokens in the first place. If the fundamental token is volatile, then it should be Steem.
Yeah.
Effective, it should be Steem. So
I agree with what Anjarki said, but I think the economics are such that in fact it will drop back down to $1. I think it's pretty inevitable.
Well,
Agreed.
one of the things that I like about it is that, if Steem goes up and we look at like the people that hold a lot of it, that's great for maybe 25 to 100 people. And maybe you can even bring it up to 1,000 at this point, but there's really just a handful of people that own Steem. When I start thinking about SBDs, if SBDs start spiking, every single person that's creating post rewards or they're authoring posts and getting post rewards, I think that distribution ends up looking a lot healthier, right? Because if I go look at Steem stats or something like that, if I go online and I look at what's the distribution of payouts, that looks healthier to me than the distribution of Steem. So if I see SBDs spiking, I feel like that's going into the hands of many more people. And if I see Steem spiking, I feel like that's really going into 25 accounts to 50 accounts primarily. Am I thinking about that the right way? Do you guys agree with that, or do you see that differently?
Well, the people who get SBD get the same value in Steem all the time, so it doesn't really make a difference for them.
I actually agree with what you said, Agrod. Essentially, any user today that is starting out and interested in growing their stake and becoming a larger stakeholder through their blogging, they're getting 5 times as much Steem, because half their post goes to Steem dollars. So if they get paid $10, $5 of that is Steem dollars. That means they can use that 5 Steem dollars to buy $50 worth of Steem. So I actually agree 100% that in the short term, this is a huge opportunity for the new users who would like to get more Steem in the platform to be able to get 5 times as much. And if the price of SBD continues to go up, maybe they can get 10 times as much.
So was the concept of Steem-backed dollars, SBD, created primarily just to make people feel safer about the Steem cryptocurrency?
It was created to have a stable currency, potentially for commerce. And it was expected that Steem would be rising in value, which has pretty much been the case, I guess. And but anyways, all crypto is pretty volatile as a rule. Unless a crypto is specifically designed to be stable, it tends to be volatile, which makes it not so good for commerce. And so SBD was the solution for a stable commerce coin, in the short term at least.
Yeah, I was one of the first people to do one of those Steem Bay auctions. I bought one of those little Steem coins, those silver coins. And it was funny because it was right as the Steem dollar was going up in value. So I ended up paying twice as much as I expected, because it was like in 7 days, this will happen. But because I understood what was going on and I understood, how the system works, I knew that was a potential. I wasn't too discouraged by it. I was happy to be participating in something I thought which was really cool, a Steem interaction, a Steem transaction on the blockchain. But I could imagine new users that could be really frustrating if they make an agreement to pay for something in 7 days with a value of a Steem dollar, and then that value goes up to 10 and they still owe that number of Steem dollars. That's a problem. So it will hinder commerce on the platform until it levels out. But historically, it's been relatively stable. We've only had a few times where it's done this big spike. So I think we'll know more in a couple weeks, actually.
Okay, that's made me feel a lot better. I think I understand it, and I hope that helps some other people too. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Kitty Girl. I'm gonna bring you back into the show audience here. I want to take maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we can bring this thing to a pause. Rainza has had some concerns about flagging and sort of plagiarism specifically. Rainza, I just brought you into the live on air channel. Can you turn off your mute, or you got to unmute yourself to be able to speak here? All right. I'll pull you back down, I guess. Okay, so we got about 15 minutes left. I don't think there's anybody else that needs to ask a question. So why don't we try to lead into some closing thoughts here for the panel? Like what do we need to leave here working on as a priority? What do we need to leave here thinking about? What should be the key takeaways of this organization and sort of the people that are elected here or control large stakes here? What there have been a lot of things that have been discussed. Where would you really point the users towards as this is where we as a community should focus on right now?
Do you want to go in order or just jump in?
We can go in order. Andraki, do you want to kick us off? Give us some closing thoughts of, maybe just where we're heading, and maybe just a little bit extra geared towards what 2018 is going to look like for us.
Sure. Well, first, I think that my presence here has to be a bit different than everyone else, because I shouldn't be telling you guys what you should be working on. I feel like what we should be doing, and this should be part of our mission, is to inform you guys about our plan. And our plan is effectively to tokenize the web with Steem blockchain, and then get your feedback and listen to what you guys are saying that we should do. We're going to be trying to improve as we go forward, as we pursue this goal of tokenizing the web, is informing you guys and then listening to your feedback in things like this.
And how do you think 2018 will look different from 2017 from this blockchain? Where
28, yeah.
Go for it.
Nuts, people. It's going to be so different than what's come before. Not that what's come before was bad. Like, that was insane too, right? This whole ride has been insane. And so the ride is going to continue to be insane. And 2018 is going to be awesome. I think SMTs are going to have the potential to go viral, because they have the potential to applications that go viral. So all it takes is one or two. So SMTs are really going to change the game. They have the potential to really impact the mainstream. And that is going to feed back onto Steem in very interesting ways, and into Steemit in very interesting ways, because Steemit.com is and should be the best advertisement for Steem. It should be the app you can tell people to go to that gets them hooked and gets them interested in exploring those other applications made by third-party developers. That's what I think next year is going to look like. We're going to step up our marketing game. Onboarding is going to become an order of magnitude easier. So that's going to enable us to bring the kind of traffic into the ecosystem that does take this whole thing to the next level. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're not trying to stand still. You every year 10xing what we did, and that's not a revenue 10x. It's how much. It's 10x the amount of value you're delivering to the world. And if you can continue to elevate the value of your protocol, that's the beauty of being an upstart, is that we can continue growing hundreds of % because we're still small. And so that's what we got to be doing, is continuing to innovate and value, because that's how you get developers. That's how you get products and services. That's how you get vendors. That's how you get the price up, is by demonstrating to the world that the value of this thing is literally billions of dollars. That's what I think 2018 is going to look like, if that helps.
It would help a lot. It would help plenty of people. All right, Block Trade, do you want to share some of the emphasis and a little bit of what you think 2018 will look like?
Sure. As far as what the emphasis is be on, I agree with a lot of things people have brought up during this talk and everything. probably number one is actually Alir's point in my mind. I would like to see steady, continuous progress on the Steemit front end. It's the primary user interface, and while I agree with Jesta, it'd be great if we had more people using other platforms as well. It's just kind of the state of the system that most people are on Steemit. So I would really like to see very steady improvements in what kind of things you can do there. So that's a little out of my control, though, at least right now. So as far as what I'm personally focusing on with our company is just other tools to help people use Steem. We're actually working on trying to solve some of the onboarding problems. We're probably going to come out with a feature soon for allowing people to buy accounts. It's a thing that's out there already, but we basically going to add our own twist on that just to give another option to people. And then beyond that, certainly I'd like to see some work done on the blockchain for the curation thing. SMT is certainly a potential long-term solution to that problem, but I think some relatively simple things could be done that could improve it quite quickly. Finally, I can't really say much about what 2018 is going to look like. I don't like to predict that kind of future. It's very difficult. Too many people doing too many things. So I'm going to kind of leave that up to other panelists to answer.
Thank you. Alir?
So 2018, it's right here. I'm really excited for the SMTs. I heard about them, I think, 100 times already, and yeah, really looking forward to them. But I think we should really focus more on what we have now than what we will have in the future. And what we have now, it's the Steemit frontend. It's the first place where everybody lands the first time, and so in the short term, that is the platform that we should enhance, and where really there is much more work to do. So for sure, I repeat, working on the Steemit frontend first. I agree with what Jesta said. Also, trying to give to the new users a way to know all the other projects around the Steem blockchain. I'm trying to do this with Utopian, but that would be great, of course, if Steemit itself could do that. I have no idea how 2018 is going to look like. I'm very new to this platform. Yeah, but I believe it's going to be a great time.
Thanks, Alir. Jessa?
Oh, where to start? I appreciate the mentions, and the focus on Steemit is an important thing. But when you guys say things like this, it worries me, because that's like the Bitcoin development team saying that we should focus all of our efforts on like a website like blockchain.info. The big picture is so much bigger, and I don't know if we're going to get there in 2018. This is going to take a lot, but we have Steem as this protocol, and it can be absolutely massive. And currently, if Steemit is the way that we're onboarding people, which it is, it's like 99% of the or 90% of the use of the blockchain. That definitely needs to be improved. It will. But just onboarding people in a different way is what I'd like to see, and adding diversity to how these tools can be used. That's what I talk about a lot in the various chat channels. As far as what I'd really like to see out of 2018, it's a hard one. I'm going to be adding some stuff myself. I think that focusing on the protocols will be good, and getting developers to also try to expand it. SMTs is going to be great for this. And to avoid rambling, I don't have anything specific else to add.
Okay, rock on. Luke Stokes.
Yeah, thank you. The question had to do with what we can do, not only just as witnesses, but also just the whole wider community. What can we do to prepare us for the future? And one thing that I would love to see more of us doing is really engaging with the core developers of the Steem blockchain and what they're asking us to do. So currently that's Steemit, the company. They've asked us to look at the Smart Media Token white paper. They've asked us to look at the Oracle white paper for what the smart media tokens are going to be. So a lot of that, I mean, even just now in the chat, someone bravely asked, what's an SMT everyone's talking about? These are topics that a lot of people don't know what they are, and they feel even silly saying, look, I don't know what's going on. And so there's a lot of information that we can all help with to educate people on. What is a smart media token? How many people that are using steemit.com right now and are passionate about the future of it have read that white paper? Probably not that many. And so reading the smart media token white paper, learning about oracles, learning about where things are going, then we can all take on some responsibility for educating our friends, our family, people that are excited about this ecosystem but haven't yet figured it out. So there could be a lot of different ways that we could do that. And I think that would be really beneficial, because then we'll be in alignment with where the core developers are currently going. And then once we understand where they're going, we can actually contribute in meaningful ways. We can say, hey, has anyone thought about this? Or what about when this happens? And that could be really exciting to kind of get everybody moving in the right direction instead of pulling in bunch of different directions. And as like Blocktrade said, we all have different skills, we all have different abilities, and we can all contribute in so many different amazing creative ways. But if it's not in alignment to a shared vision, we might pull in different directions. So I'd like, again, just to see that education and to see that taken on as a personal responsibility for everyone. And related to that, I think one thing we can do for adoption is bring whole communities together to the Steem blockchain. I think I've invited a number of people, and they've created accounts, but they don't post because none of their friends are here. So a way to come in and say, hey, community, everyone here create an account on Steem, and all these conversations we're having elsewhere, let's just have them here now, and let's actually get paid to do it. How cool would that be? And also educate ourselves on this new thing called cryptocurrency and this new thing called the blockchain, while participating in an actual version of it. So if we all have different communities that we're part of that are not currently on Steem, maybe become salesmen, pitch it and say, hey, what if this entire community moves to Steem? And that might be a really cool way to do both the education part and the adoption part and onboarding part together when you bring a whole group together. So that would be my thought.
Yeah, I'd love to see some Steem behind the account of Steemit sales. The Steemit doesn't have a sales organization. We do have 450,000 accounts. Maybe it's 200,000 plus people. We could incentivize them to go bring people on. I keep thinking about that, of sort of like a utopian-io, but specific for sales efforts, and just get everybody here incentivized to go bring their friend on board through some upvotes or something like that.
Yeah, and if I could add just one last piece too, it's realizing we don't just need content creators and voters, we also need investors. And bringing both of those groups on together will keep the rewards pool growing as we pay more people out of it.
Yeah. All right, Fairson.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to 2018 as a year which shows us a lot of new platforms to use. We had several come up in 2017, and I know there are several in the making, be it with SMT or not, just growing the ecosystem, giving new possibilities to onboard different kinds of users who we couldn't catch by now, and yeah, just grow the whole Steem universe. And yeah, all the rest the guys before me said.
All right, great. Tim Cliff.
So I'm lucky I get to go last. I've got quite a bit to say, so I'm going to try to talk very fast. Real quickly, I wanted to touch on what I've been up to recently. I'm actually mainly focused behind the scenes right now. I've been having a lot of discussions with people about different directions to take the platform. So that's been taking up some of my time. I'm also involved in the help channel in Steemit Chat, basically helping new users when they get stuck with issues on the website. But there's another project that I've been spending most of my time on, actually, and I'm pretty excited about it. I have a general policy of not really talking about what I'm doing until it's done and ready, so I'm going to kind of break my own rule here a little bit. One of the projects that I've been working on has been exchange outreach, to basically reach out to some of the other cryptocurrency exchanges that are out there and engage with them and talk to them and try to basically get Steem listed on some more exchanges. So I don't have any news to share on that yet, but just know that's kind of where I'm spending a lot of my effort right now. and I'm doing my best to hopefully have some good news to share with everybody relatively soon. But again, I don't want to talk about anything until it's actually going to happen. As far as everyone else in the platform, I agree with what Luke Stokes said as far as we need to focus more on investors. I think it's important for everyone who has the ability to be marketing Steem as a currency should really be doing that more. Some of the main talking points are obviously 0 transaction fees. That's actually huge. 3-second confirmation times is amazing, especially when you compare it to Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so there's also a lot of other aspects of the currency that I think you should be aware of, and I would highly encourage you to read the Steem Blue Paper. It does a really good job of kind of summarizing all the key points of what makes Steem as a token and a blockchain amazing, and it's really not that hard of a read. So if you can, consume that, integrate it into your knowledge base, and just have those talking points when you're talking to people about Steem, it'll go a long way as far as selling the currency. As far as developers, I think the Utopian.io project is an amazing addition to the Steem ecosystem. I'm really impressed with the work they're doing, and I'm excited to see how that's going to continue. I think some areas that as a development community need to be focused on a little bit more is how do we make it easier for a developer to work on Steem projects. A lot of people that I talk to are, they're stuck. They don't know where to turn to. There aren't very good resources. So if that could be more of a focus for the development community in 2018, I think that would go a long way as far as getting more apps. And I think there needs to be a better discussion, and I'm not sure how to orchestrate that with the development community as far as what projects do we want people to be working on, and really try to get the developers that we do have that are able to write these awesome apps focused on the things that are going to add the most value to the platform. A couple last closing points. I know I'm taking up some time here, but I really want to emphasize that everyone on the platform has unique value to add. And I think it's really crucial that everybody looks at what they have to offer and find a way to use it in a way that makes the platform more valuable and better for the users, better for the investors. And so essentially what that boils down to is what can you do to increase the value of the platform and try not to do things that'll decrease it. I know that's very vague, but I think people definitely need to be asking themselves that question and take it as a personal responsibility for what can you do that's going to help move us towards that $10 Steem target. And then the last thing is just from a user perspective, there's a few things that I think we can focus on a little bit more that'll definitely help. Obviously, onboarding is one of them, but there's 3 key areas that I would encourage us as a community to focus more on. One of them is creating viral content or content that's going to be picked up by SEO searches. Actually putting in the time to do a well-written article that when someone searches for something on Google, it's going to come up as one of the top search results, or something that everyone's going to want to share with their friends because it's just so awesome. And so the more of that type of content our author community can be putting out, the better, because that's just more eyeballs that are going to be landing on Steem. And then a part of that too is we need to be doing everything we can to share the content on Steem outside of Steem. Post things on Facebook, post things on Reddit, send them to your friends. Just get the good content that's already on the platform in front of more eyeballs. And then another thing I hear a lot of people talking about is, well, I'm not a content creator. I don't really blog. There is a huge market for writing valuable, well-written replies to people's posts. I remember when I was a new user and I wasn't making a lot of money on my rewards, one of the main things that kept me here was the interaction that I had with the people in the community. When I had people that were commenting on my post and putting friendly, well-written, thought-out responses to what I was writing, it didn't really matter as much that I was only making a few cents on what I was earning, because I was making connections and friends with people on the platform. So if all you do is spend an hour a day going and finding people that you think you would be friends with and engaging with them on the posts and writing a valuable content or comment that is going to make their day or increase the value of their post, that's a huge way to add value to the platform. And so with that, I will end.
So I can also share that, the Minnow Support Project here, we're going to try to keep growing this. And as we get more and more new members as part of the Steem platform, we're going to try to onboard them and educate them. And actually, I hope that Luke Stokes, that you in particular will help work with us some more, whether that's through a radio show or some time, or just you have a passion for the education of people on the channel or in the block. So this is one of the best spots to go get that education, and I invite you to go do that with us. I also think that we need outreach, and I'm hoping to expand just how much the MSP Waves broadcast and what capabilities we have with that. Especially with higher SBD amounts, I feel like we have a way I can actually start paying people to be on this radio station with us and try to drag some celebrities of variety types to be on here. I'm also trying to think of novel ways to go raise some money for MSP Waves and getting development. And if I can kind of hammer out some details, it might be a new way to bring money into the platform, to try to figure out a way to get investment opportunities working here, to again figure out ways to go combine. There are people that have this impression of the big evil whales, and I'm oftentimes thinking like, well, change the word from whale to investor, and we want to attract them, and we're not going to attract lots of people here and raise the price of Steem by just calling them big evil whales. But if this becomes a good place for investment, and even trying to think about ways that we can use this platform to launch companies, communities, whatever, I think that this can just help us grow quite substantially. And I think and believe that this media platform, in its current state, there's more that we can do. But I feel like this is a place that I can dedicate a lot of time, and growing a media outlet out of Steem, I think, would help quite a bit. Okay. So we're 6 minutes over time. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take any more questions from the audience. I think we're going to bring this to a close. So you have been listening to MSP Waves Radio. This is the Steem Panel Discussion. I'll try to have another one of these either in January or February. I'm thinking about hosting one in between different cryptocurrencies. I don't quite have the network for that, but if there are folks in the audience that can think of, hey, if we do something like this, but we can bring in people from Dash and bring in people from Ethereum and bring in people from some of these other coins, then that would be awesome. So if you have a network and you'd like to connect, my current target date for that is January 27th. And I'd love to try to hit another one of these panel discussions, but now start talking about how can the Steem ecosystem interact with some of the other cryptocurrency ecosystems that already exist, and what overlap can we find. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to Andrarchy for representing Steemit, Block Trades, Alir, Jesta, Luke Stokes, Fersim, and Tim Cliff for being phenomenal witnesses and being part of the show with us. And I don't have a date yet, but I'll get another Steem panel discussion going sometime in January. And thank you so much for your participation to the panel. Thank you for the people that were bringing questions. Thank you to the audience. And I'm going to go upload this to YouTube shortly, and I will make this available to the network at large sometime today. And with that, I'll stop the recording and just say one last time, thanks so much, guys.